He told her to step back from the gate, but seconds later the gate said her name, and the whole world heard it. At 6:15 a.m., drenched in sweat from her 5-mile run der Simone Carteret, 53-year-old black tech mogul in track pants and a faded Nike tee paused at the entrance to her own Beverly Hills mansion. No makeup, no security detail, no flashy car, just her presence. But to Greg Whitman, the white security chief with a square jaw and a clipboard full of assumptions, she looked like a trespasser. "Residents use the side entrance," he barked, eyes narrowing, as if her skin color and hoodie disqualified her from ownership. Simone remained silent, letting the gate's red sensor blink access denied. Then, with one quiet command into her cracked phone. "Carla, activate protocol." 7. Everything changed, a calm voice echoed from the speaker above Simone Carter, primary resident. Access verified by Carter Tech OS. The silence that followed felt biblical. Whitman scoffed. "Nice trick," he said. "Anyone can fake a name." But the crowd gathering behind Simone knew better. Phones were raised. A florist whispered, "She built this place." Another woman chimed in. "She's the one who funded the school down the block." Still calm, Simone stepped forward not to prove herself, but to reclaim what was already hers. "You didn't stop me because you knew who I was," she said softly. "You stopped me because you didn't. And that's the problem." And as the gate clicked open and Greg's authority crumbled, the world bore witness to something more powerful than status presence that needed no permission. No, Greg Whitman didn't move. Not at first. His fingers hovered near the console like they could still undo what had just happened. But the voice from the security system had been loud and clear, heard not just by Simone, but by every bystander who had paused their morning to watch. The delivery driver lowered his phone for just a second, shook his head in disbelief, then hit record again. "Primary resident," the system had said. And that meant something, but Greg wasn't done. "Override or not," he snapped, "you're not getting through without my clearance. The system could have been hacked." Simone didn't flinch. Her eyes were steady, calm, not cold, but full of the kind of quiet that only comes from someone who's had to earn her place again and again. "If you want to escalate," she said, "you already did that the moment you assumed I didn't belong." 2 more security officers emerged from the booth behind Greg. One held a coffee mug, the other looked barely awake. Both stopped short when they saw the standoff. "Maintenance," one of them asked, genuinely confused. "She claims she lives here," Greg said, not even trying to hide the disdain. Simone's voice didn't rise, but her words hit harder than any shout. "I don't claim anything. Your system confirmed it. The only thing in question here is your judgment." Greg's face tightened. "You think this is one of those viral TikTok moments that you can twist this to make me look like the bad guy?" Simone gave a small, measured smile. "This isn't for TikTok. This is for every time someone like me has had to prove themselves while someone like you never had to explain a thing." The crowd behind the gate grew thicker. A woman in a Tesla whispered to her daughter over FaceTime, "That's her. Dr. Carter. She built Carter Tech. She funds the hospital downtown." From the sidewalk, a teenager in a barista apron muttered, "My cousin said she personally visited every floor of their HQ. Even the janitor rooms." And still Simone stood at the threshold unmoving. She wasn't just holding ground, she was the ground. Greg tried one more time, his voice now brittle. "I'm calling LAPD. You're threatening a gated community." Simone didn't blink. She tapped her phone again. "Carla," she said, "activate Phase 2. Real-time audit. Broadcast the compliance log across all internal channels. Document this." Carla's voice came through instantly. "Confirmed. Incident tagged. All feeds recorded. Greg Whitman's actions under review. Legal has been notified." The other guard suddenly shifted. One took a half step away from Greg. The other checked his tablet and quietly mumbled, "She's on the deed since 2016. Owns this house and the adjacent property. Greg's voice cracked. You can't override me like this. Simone finally took a step forward, slow and certain. Greg, she said, her tone like glass cutting through fog, you never had authority. Just a uniform and an illusion of control. Phones went up again. Not for drama, for record, for truth. And with one final breath, Simone stepped through the gate. Not because she was allowed to, but because she always could. Behind her, Greg stood frozen, powerless. Not because someone took his authority, but because it was never really his to begin with. The gate didn't just open for Simonate, shut the door on every assumption Greg had ever made. The moment Dr. Simone Carter crossed through that gate, something shifted. Not just in the courtyard, but in every person watching. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it was unmistakable. She walked only a few steps inside before stopping near the marble fountain she had personally commissioned. Behind her, Greg Whitman stood frozen outside the gate, clutching his dead radio like it still meant something. The guards he once commanded were no longer looking to him for instruction. Their eyes followed Simone, no steady, unsure, but aware. The florist, still live-streaming, whispered into his phone. She didn't yell, didn't raise a finger. And still she owns the whole block. That line sent ripples through the live-stream chat. Comments poured in. Power in silence. She built it. They tried to block her from it. That gate didn't deny her. It exposed them. From a nearby sidewalk, a middle-aged woman in yoga pants and messy bun called out, "She designed the condos down on Larchmont, right?" A man with a camera nodded. "Carter Tech funded the whole renewable grid project last year." That's her. But Simone wasn't listening to the crowd. She wasn't performing for them. She was standing still, grounded, composed, letting the moment speak louder than she ever needed to. Then her phone buzzed again. Carla's voice came through the speaker, not just on the call now, but piped through the PA system of the estate. Dr. Carter, Internal Legal, has flagged Greg Whitman's employment file. 6 prior complaints. None escalated until today. Bias-based behavior noted. System override complete. Would you like to initiate final access termination? There was a pause. The kind of pause that reshapes the air in a space. Greg stepped forward, instinctively shaking his head. "Dr. Carter, please. I didn't know who you were. This was a misunderstanding." Simone turned slowly to face him. Her eyes weren't cruel, but they were clear. "That was the problem," she said. "You didn't know who I was, but you thought you did." "I followed protocol," he stammered. "No," she replied. "You followed bias. You saw sweatpants and brown skin, and you made a choice. Not once did you ask my name. Not once did you ask your own system." Her voice didn't rise, but every word landed like a bell rung in a quiet chapel. The guards behind Greg lowered their eyes. The younger one removed his earpiece and slipped it into his pocket. The other took a deliberate step back. Simone turned slightly, raising her voice just enough to carry through the open gate. To everyone watching, she said, "Understand this power isn't always loud. It isn't always dressed in silk or driving a Bentley. Sometimes it jogs in silence, and when you try to block it, you reveal more about you than you ever will about it." A hush swept the courtyard. Then Carla's voice returned. "Would you like to proceed with access termination, Dr. Carter?" Simone didn't hesitate this time. "Yes. Terminate access to Greg Whitman. Revoke credentials. Reassign perimeter authority." Behind her, the gate control panel let out a low buzz, followed by a dim red flash. Greg's badge beeped once, then went dark. His radio let out a soft crackle and died in his hand. Just plastic now. The guards didn't even look at him. They turned to Simone, one offering a respectful nod. The shift had happened. The command had changed hands, not just procedurally, but spiritually. Simone exhaled slowly, then turned toward her home. The 3-story glass and steel structure caught the morning sun, casting light across her silhouette as she walked toward the entrance. From behind, the florist whispered into his phone, That's how you fire someone, without ever needing to say the word. The applause didn't come in roars. It came in quiet affirmations. Nods, soft claps, humbled silence. And in that silence, Simone Carter reminded everyone of something far deeper than wealth or position. You don't have to shout to command a room. You just have to own it. Inside the house, sunlight filtered through towering glass walls, casting soft reflections on the marble floor as Dr. Simone Carter entered her foyer. She paused, not from exhaustion, but intention. She wasn't just coming home. She was making a point presence earned and unapologetic, didn't ask for permission. Behind her, the estate's main gate slowly sealed shut with a soft click. The tension outside was still crackling, but Simone's steps were steady. Her home welcomed her not with alarms or applause, but with the dignified silence of something deeply rooted. Her breathing had slowed. No more adrenaline, just gravity. Purpose. Truth. She looked up at the portrait that hung above the grand staircase, a black and white photo of her mother, in a Sunday dress, one hand on her hip, the other resting on a worn leather Bible. Her expression fierce, still unflinching. A woman who'd never been allowed through the front doors of the buildings her daughter now owned, but whose legacy entered first. Simone whispered beneath her breath, "Mama, we walked through today." Her eyes drifted toward the antique side table. Resting there was an old journal, weathered leather pages bloated with ink and memory. She opened it, flipped past pages filled with architectural sketches, business notes, and personal reflections, and landed on a phrase written 13 years ago. "Legacy is not what you leave behind. It's what they can't erase while you're still here." She ran her fingers across the ink, as if it were still drying. That quote, written when Carter Tech was just a dream in her garage, now echoed through the streets outside. A truth the world had just watched unfold in real time. Outside, the crowd had not dispersed. In fact, it had grown. What started as a confrontation had become a moment, a live-streamed, real-time reckoning of assumption versus reality. Someone knocked lightly on the glass door. Simone turned to see a young black woman in workout gear holding up her phone like a mic. She didn't step inside, just leaned in respectfully. "Dr. Carter," she asked gently, "can I ask you something?" Simone opened the door just enough for her voice to carry. "How do you stay so calm?" the woman asked. "When someone tries to erase you." Simone met her eyes. She didn't smile. She didn't soften. But her tone was warm, measured. Because every time Im underestimated, she said, "I learned something about the people doing the underestimating." She paused, then added with quiet strength, "And every time I stay calm, I remember storms don't shake foundations. They just test them." A murmur of wow rose from the sidewalk. No cheers, no grandstanding, just recognition. From the corner, a teenage barista called out, "My brother interned at Carter Tech. Said you visited every department, even cleaned floors with the janitors for a day." Simone chuckled softly. "Tell him I said thank you. That's where real leadership begins." A woman in a minivan honked lightly and leaned out the window, phone in hand. "My daughter's writing a school report on Black innovators. She's watching you live." Simone nodded. "Tell her this make your own name too." The moment shimmered. Something larger than viral fame. Something deeper than vindication. The story was no longer about Greg Whitman's failure. It was about Simone Carter's endurance. She stepped back inside and closed the door, not to shut the world out, but to center herself once again. The house didn't need to applaud her. It stood because of her. Every brick, every beam, every code embedded in its walls traced back to her fingerprint. As she walked slowly past family photos and tech patents mounted on the wall, her steps were quiet, but undeniable. This wasn't just about ownership. It was about presence claimed, not granted. Before heading upstairs, she stopped at the base of the staircase, looked once more at her mother's portrait, and said softly, "They tried to guard the gate, Mama, but they forgot we built the land." Upstairs, the hallway was lined with framed moments, snapshots of Simone's children graduating the ribbon cutting of Carter Tech HQ, her first data center blueprints scribbled on napkins. But today's memory wasn't something to frame. It was something the world had already recorded. She walked to the back patio, sunlight spilling through the wide glass doors. Beverly Hills shimmered below her, but her gaze stayed on the reflection in the window, herself not in a tailored blazer or on a magazine cover, but in a sweat-soaked tee, still catching her breath from a 5-mile run, and still powerful. She picked up her phone one last time. The live stream had just ended, but thousands of messages continued to flood in. One in particular caught her eye. It was from a high school student named Raina. "Dr. Carter, I watched the whole thing with my mom. How do I know if I belong in rooms I've never been invited into?" Simone read the question twice, then whispered her reply out loud, more to herself, maybe even to her younger self. You don't wait for the invitation. You walk in with truth, with grace, and let the room adjust to your presence. And with that, she stepped outside, letting the morning air carry the weight of everything that had just unfolded. But now she walked not just for herself, but for every young black girl, watching every underestimated soul who thought silence meant weakness. Life lesson: true power doesn't come from shouting. It comes from knowing who you are, even when the world doesn't. Simone Carter didn't need to prove her worth, she needed only to stand in it. When someone doubts you, let your actions speak. Let your grace make the noise. And when the gate won't open, remind them you built the foundation. We want to hear from you. Have you ever been underestimated? Told you didn't belong only to prove them wrong without saying a word? Drop your story in the comments below. And if this story moved, you hit that subscribe button for more inspiring real-life stories that restore your faith in dignity, justice, and quiet strength. Because here we don't just tell stories, we reclaim them.